I honestly feel like the negative reactions always get pushed to the surface more so than positive ones.
Of course.
Because people always have an axe to grind when it comes to things, and some people are less vocal until someone else openly says exactly how they feel, and then once they're like, I'm not the only one, then they chime in, and then that turns into a snowball effect where everyone's like, oh, it's already a thing, oh, me too. And even then, some people, I feel, when they might even be enjoying the game, and this might be a tiny little thing that they feel is like off, but when they see all these other people on, they want to join the bandwagon. Because they feel like, oh, this will bring it to light or what have you. But then more often than not, it turns into like almost like a witch hunt, which is why I really feel for some developers. There was that recent post about Anthem, how they're like, one of the people from BioWare like, well, when you say mean things, when developers try to reach out and you say nothing but mean things, then they're not going to want to talk. I'm like, okay, granted, but at the same time, you did not deliver anything that you said you were going to deliver. So it's not one of those where I don't believe they deserve to be talked down to, but I believe they need to answer for why them, especially BioWare, are delivering a game that's nowhere near what they teased.
What they promised it was going to be similar to like, what was it, Half-Life? Is that the one? Infinite World?
No, that was No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky.
Now here's the difference though, because I give Hello Games a lot of credit because I think it's either Sean Murray or Patrick Murray, I forget. I know his last name's Murray. And I'm in the PlayStation ecosphere. That's just where I play my games. I have nothing against Xbox. They have a great library. But just PlayStation's where I'm at. But I blame Sony a lot on what happened to No Man's Sky because what I feel happened, and I can be wrong, and I'm willing to admit I'm wrong if I am, but I feel like the guys at Hello Games, which is a small team, by the way. It's a very, very small team, like a handful of people on that team. They approached Sony, and they said, we want to do an exclusive, and this is the grand idea. And Sony clung to that and said, that's an amazing idea, let's do that. And I'm pretty sure they already had a build of it at the time. But then Sony was like, we want to lead with this. We want to lead with this as far as ads go. So we're going to throw this out there, and we're going to, can you deliver by this date? And I'm like, sure. And then not really understanding the implications of doing that. No Man's Sky was definitely not what they wanted at the time of release.
And they keep patching it.
We're going to have a big patch this summer, actually. Okay. There's going to be 3 small patches, but it's underneath No Man's Sky Beyond, and it's full multiplayer. Pretty much it's going to be what they were... not exactly what they wanted, because at the beginning, what they advertised was like the universe was so big that the chance that you would run into another player is like less than 1%. Because of how big it is. But then day one, people are running in, like, are landing on planets that they're supposed to be in, but they can't see each other. So,
the multiplayer element wasn't really there.
Right, it wasn't really there. Like, they didn't really leave it open to be able to, like, even play with your friends, I don't believe, at the time. But somehow 2 people managed to realize, oh, hey, we're on the same planet. We're in the same location, because you can track that on the planets. And they noticed that, oh, it's daytime where I am, but I'm in the exact location as you are, but the other person was nighttime. So it could have been a different server instance. Could have been a thing. But there's just a lot of things that were not, like, the look of the game also didn't kind of tie into the look when they teased it. Like to me, like, the biggest thing, at least for where my level was when the game came out, was just, hey, I want to be able to explore space and planets and be able to be on a planet, walking around on foot, doing exploration, jump into a ship, point the nose up, escape the atmosphere, go, hey, I want to go to that planet, and do that, and do exactly the same thing over and over, which they delivered.
That's what you were able to do.
That's what I was able to do, and that's what I liked. And, like, okay, there's really not much here. There wasn't much of a story. There really wasn't much of a tutorial. They just kind of throw you in the game. It was definitely not. Sony advertised it like it was some AAA title. It was definitely not a AAA title. It was definitely like an indie game, which was fine, and that's how I took it. And I think that's why I enjoyed it.
And I was thinking that it was going to be some next level elevation of gaming.
A lot of people did. People did because of the way it was advertised. And you can even tell if you go back to those old interviews with Murray. They would throw questions at him, and it looked like he's either having to lie or have to dodge it somehow.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's Sony's pressure on his neck. Like, we want this to be a great thing. And it's like, well, it can be. You just have to give us time.
Right.
And I think he's proven that. All I'll say is anyone can give Hello Games shit for how No Man's Sky was launched, because even I'll admit that was it was a bad launch. I got what I wanted out of it, but even then it was like, okay, outside of going, hyper jumping from star system to star system and exploring all these different planets and having these space dogfights.
There's space dogfights?
Yeah, you can come across like enemies in space, and they're going to want to take you down for your resources.
NPCs or other players? Okay,
NPCs.
okay.
And you can shoot them down, but after a while, that's boring.
Yeah.
So I stopped playing, but not because I didn't enjoy it. It just got repetitive and boring.
How many times can you play a game?
Right.
Just in general.
And I can't. No one can deny the determination they have to make the game what they wanted. It's been three years now, maybe 4. I don't know.
Holy crap!
Possibly 3. Since the game's come out, and they're still working on it. They could at this point, I feel like they could absolutely move on and work on their next project. But I give them credit because I feel, and I can be wrong with this. This is just an assumption, but I feel them as a developer and a small developing team as well is they could not. As a content creator, I'm going to segue into this, but as a content creator, everything you create, even if it's shit, you have an attachment to. Yeah. Even if you look at it and you're like, I recognize this as crap, but there's a very small part of you that's like, I love this. Because it's something you put out, and it's something that you put time into.
Yeah.
No one can take that away from you. You could be embarrassed by it. You could be like, I don't want anyone to see this, but at the end of the day, you're going to catch yourself pulling it up and watching it because you yourself enjoy it because you put the time in. So taking that perspective, to which I have when it comes to content creation, I feel like the guys at Hello Games have that same sense of, this is our thing.
Yeah.
And you couldn't honestly move on to another project until this first thing that you created is exactly what you wanted it to be. That's the sign of a developer who's not willing to give up on something just because it had a bad start. Doesn't mean it has to end a dead game that no one wants to play. I mean, Sony hasn't shut down the servers for it yet, so clearly there is some sort of a fan base on it, and clearly they're not willing to give up on it. So if that's how they feel, then I'm willing to continue giving it a chance.
Even that. Hey, what's up, everybody? Jeremy here, joined with Ray Alfafara.
Hey, guys.
We were talking about content creation. We were kind of just now in the middle of a conversation about Hello Games and Sony and No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
It seems almost unprecedented that they obviously so many games continually are updated, but to further develop the game and to flesh it out in the ways to match those expectations that were set in the front
Years
end. I've
ago,
never seen another game do that.
I think, hang on, I have to know. No Man's Sky release date. I want to know how long it's. Okay, 2016. It's been 3.
That's crazy.
It's going on 3 years now, and they're still working on it, despite the botched launch and everything. They're like, we're getting a new update this summer. And I think they're fully integrating the multiplayer aspect of it. And again, like I think if a team as big as them getting the support of Sony, I don't know if it's. I honestly feel it's their personal choice to want to continue developing for the game, because I feel like any other developer, like big developers like EA and Activision, are quick to just drop a game. Like, it's not doing well. Get it out of here. We don't want to deal with it anymore. Yeah. This is a small handful number of people in Hello Games, and they're just like, we're not giving up on it. That's something I give a lot more respect to, and am more willing to give a chance to their game than an EA game coming out.
On the flip side of that, though, EA has the financial backing to have the freedom to just axe it, where if you're all in on this particular project,
right.
you don't necessarily have the resources or the freedom to just hop into another thing.
Right. Well, they also, at the same token, they also have the resources to keep it going if they wanted to.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
It's like, we have some money to spare. Let's see what happens if we keep developing it, throw some more content out there, and see what the community says. But they're very quick to see, oh, we see a dip, axe it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to risk it. We want to make sure our bonuses are really big this year. So it... And also, I also understand on their side, yes, I understand they have investors that they have to please.
Yeah.
But at the same time, no EA, Activision, Ubisoft execs are going to lose their job. It's the small developing groups that are lost. Like, rest in peace, Pandemic and Visceral Games and all these other studios that these big publishers like, you're done because they can. I don't believe for a second that any of these developers, intentionally make a bad game. I don't honestly believe that. I do hold them accountable for when they release a game and it's not complete. I think that's a trend this day and age with gaming, specifically since it's an internet age, that they feel we can release a game and if it's not working, we can fix it later. And I think the community is starting to feel that, because even myself, I'm tired of paying full price $60 for a game
that's not finished.
That they're just like, oh yeah, this is what you get for right now, and we have more stuff coming. It's like, no, I paid $60. I want this content. And like, oh yeah, by the way, the extra stuff, there's a season pass if you want that. It's like, then why am I paying you $60 right now?
Yeah.
You can go screw yourselves. I don't.
Well, like with movie release dates, it is very much set in stone. And I think, like, I don't remember release dates being, I guess because, like you said, the internet age, there didn't used to be this big emphasis on when the game was coming out. You'd know a little bit ahead of time, but now it's like, once they set this date, it's almost in stone, and you can't move mountains to get them to switch that release date because maybe the consumer is expecting it then, and they might feel like that's even a loss.
Or if it's been pushed enough. Yeah, there's lots of games that have been pushed multiple times, and then even then, some of the, like, God, perfect example, Duke Nukem Forever. That game was pushed back 12 years?
What?
Something like that, yeah.
That's
when they first announced it,
crazy.
it's gone through different publishers, and then they switched to a completely different game engine, and then it came out and it was still garbage.
Really?
I mean, Duke Nukem fan, like, as a Duke Nukem fan, I found some enjoyment of it, but it wasn't a game of the year by any stretch. But yeah, I think this is why. I think it's a good example as to why I love single-player games, because there's no fixing that.
Yeah.
There is no fixing that. There's like Resident Evil 2 is a fantastic game, Resident Evil 2 remake, and there is no chance in hell that Capcom could be like, oh, here's your single-player game. Oh, you didn't like the ending? Don't worry, we'll fix it later. There is none of that you can do with a single-player game. You get everything you pay for from the get-go. They might give you DLC for more content later on, but that's something that's completely separate from the main story.
Yeah, right.
Spider-Man did that. Spider-Man has a fantastic campaign. God, I choked up so many different times during that story, and then I was like, oh, by the way, we have this City That Never Sleeps DLC. It's released in 3 chapters, and it's more content, and it has nothing to do with the main story. It's something additional if you want to keep playing more Spider-Man. It's like, yes, here's more money.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay. That was your 2018 pick, right?
Yeah.
Best game of the year?
Spider-Man is my best game of the year. I just want to be Spider-Man. That's all I care about.
It's a good choice.
Yeah.
It's a good choice. I played a little bit of Red Dead, and I think that game is fantastic.
Red Dead's a good game.
But it was even one of those things where people weren't happy with certain little elements of it, you know?
The realism bit can get tedious. Like, it's one, especially if you're going from the original Red Dead to the current one, because the original one was definitely a more casual Red Dead Redemption.
Right.
But of course, that was also last gen, so there's of course development limitations, console limitations. Of course, it is Rockstar. Rockstar has a buttload of money, so they could do whatever they want, which is clear when you look at Red Dead Redemption 2.
Mm-hmm.
So there's now a hunger meter that you have to keep track of. So you have to make sure your character is fed and he has enough rest. Otherwise, and to their credit, you see the implications of like staying awake for 4 or 5 days. His stamina drains quicker. You hear him like wheezing from time to time, and I'm not talking about later on in the game. I'm like even earlier in the game. You can hear, you can even see like a well-rested Arthur. He's standing up straight and he's fine. But if you keep him awake for 3 days, he's like leaning over and he's heaving and he puts his hands up like this because he's tired.
That's
like,
cool.
And it's just like, okay, that's a lot of detail, and
Yeah.
I personally love those kinds of details. But then I can see other people. It's like, I don't want to go to sleep. I just want to keep playing the story, and it's
too
like
involved.
right. But again, that kind of goes down to what I was saying before. Is like I think with any kind of content creation, whether it's a movie or a game or anything, the creator does things with purpose. And it bothers me. It bugs me so much when people are like looking at a game as beautiful and detailed as Red Dead, and they go, "Oh, the health system's so tedious. Why do I always have to eat and stuff like that?" And it's like, well, it's because that's how you get in tune with your character. It's a small way of how you are trying to take care of your character, which is in games is usually an extension of yourself. So you want to take care of him, make sure he's up to snuff in case something happens. So you don't want to be in the middle of a gunfight and you're losing your stamina too quickly and you die.
Yeah.
So these are things that you have to focus on and maintain and take care of, and then you see it later in the game how that translates. It's part the whole dynamic of how the game is built like that whole, I forget the word I'm thinking of. Whatever.
No idea.
But the whole dynamic of that aspect of the game is also tied to the story. Like, spoiler alert, if you haven't played Red Dead, you just whatever. But essentially, I'm not going to say exactly what, but Arthur gets sick later on in the game. He gets sick. So in the beginning of the game, you're looking at your health meter and you have to eat food, and even your horse has to eat and rest. If you want to hit the stamina to stay up, you have to refill these cores. And then later on in the game, when Arthur gets sick, those cores drain super fast. So if you were complaining in the beginning about having to take care of it, you're going to be really annoyed later on in the game. But the whole purpose of that, the goal, the reason why that's ingrained as part of the game system is so that you visually and almost physically, since you're doing all these actions, see how this illness is affecting Arthur.
Yeah. So it serves a narrative function, but then it also almost puts another ticking clock on top of it, which also helps with suspense or whatever.
Yeah. Like I honestly have a problem when I play with friends with online games, because story is a big deal. I think story is way more important. But then I have some friends that, and no offense to anyone that thinks this way about games. I mean, if this is how you enjoy your games, more power to you. But it's like I have a friend that's like, oh, I can shoot a barrage of rockets. Cool, I'm in. It's like, okay,
yeah.
Lowest common denominator for me is like, I can walk into a game store, close my eyes, reach my hand out on a shelf, and pick a game up that has shooter explosion stuff in it. But if you want me to go in there and do that and expect the game to be good and compelling and make me feel something, they're too few and far between. So like Anthem's a good example. I don't feel like the story is very strong in Anthem. That let alone I haven't. That's just an assumption because I haven't played it. I played the beta, but the problem is I played the beta and nothing as far as the missions that they provide in the beta were compelling enough for me to go, I think I will enjoy this story in this game. Gameplay is great. Graphics look good. The traversal and the 3D movement systems are good. I can see a lot of people having fun with it. But one of the biggest things when it comes to playing games like that is I need to know the why I'm doing something.
Don't get a lot of that in like League of Legends or Fortnite or Apex Legends more recently. Right,
and it's fine if you're you're not a casual game. I take that back. You're not a casual gamer if you like those games. But
I see what you're saying. It's more of a drop in and drop out kind of experience.
Yeah, it's because there's, and especially with people that work, you want to have a game where you can just sort of like jump in, do a round or two, and play for an hour, get some satisfaction out of it, and skid out. Whereas someone like me who really wants to take the time to play a game and invest 3 or 4 hours into a session and play a story mission and potentially help people even though they're virtual people, but help people.
Yeah.
And feel like you're making a difference in the game world. The game characters that I play, I always see as like me putting myself in those shoes. I'm not just playing the character; I am that character. My wife Tiffany can tell you so many times I'll play a game and like a big important story-driven choice comes up, and it's like do this or this, and I pause the game and I'm pacing back and forth, talking to myself like, oh man, if I go with that guy, it's gonna help the community. But then it's going to kill this entire squad. But if I go this route, the community is not going to have food. But then these guys are going to get some weapons. Oh, what do I do? And it's like, it's not just a simple, oh, I'm clearly going to do this. Like, I put a lot of thought into the actions. Which is why I feel like Anthem is a letdown to me. Because, like, you watch the E3 teaser and it's like, it's a story that your actions have consequence and the world is dynamic and everything, and then I see the beta and I see what people are saying about the story, and it's like there's none of that. Like lots of people unanimously are saying there is no developing story. Essentially all it boils down to is you go and talk to somebody, he says, oh hey, I have this problem, what do you think I should do? And you choose for him, and then later you go and talk to him again and he's in the same spot, and they go, oh hey, I did this and this happened, thanks. And that's it. Yeah. It doesn't affect you. It affects it, and it doesn't even have any effect on the world. It's just the guy's either happy or sad now, and it's like, okay, I could do that with a text game or a choose your own adventure book.
Well, I was gonna say, to kind of bridge the gap and take us over into that, did you watch Bandersnatch on Netflix?
I have not. A lot of people tell me that I should.
So it's an episode of Black Mirror, and it is essentially a choose your own adventure episode.
Yep.
Obviously the run length is going to vary depending on the choices that you get, but
right.
If you're familiar with the medium, choose your own adventure books are only sort of really choose your own adventure. Lots of the options are just going to lead you back to the beginning, or you're going to die.
Right.
There's really only one ending.
I had a bunch of those as Goosebump books. Goosebump had a run of those choose your own adventure. Yeah.
I remember the Goosebumps books.
And yeah, it was the same thing. Like there was a point where I was even like, I wanted to find all the endings, so I'd have like a dozen bookmarks, and it's like I get to a choice, and it's like go to page 67 to do this, or go to page 102 for this, and it's like put a bookmark there. What's 102? Don't like that. Going to 67. And and it was just to see how much of a difference. And sometimes they're very inconsequential. So it's like choose this or this, and you go there, and it's like, oh, you died. And it's like, oh, all right. Well, what if I go back, go to the next one? It's like, okay, you entered the room and nothing happened. Oh, okay. Yeah. So what's the next choice? So it's I'm not saying every single choice has to be a winner.
No, right. But that's kind of Bandersnatch in a nutshell. It has a ticking clock element, so you get to choose one or the other. You can't pause though. You got 5 seconds, and it's cool because the technique of it is like, I'll be like, hey Ray, do you want to drink water or a Gatorade? And then the clock starts running down, and I'm like, come on, dude, make up your mind. Right, got all day. So there's like this extra pressure while they're sitting there, and it will continue to run until the clock runs out. But yeah, ultimately a lot of the choices are going to bring you back to the beginning. There's a couple choices like, what kind of cereal do you want to eat for breakfast? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just like,
it's totally just there to give you a choice. Yeah.
Right. And I think there's potential moving forward with it, but there's inevitably always that movies are a passive experience. Gaming is a very active experience, and I don't know where those two worlds necessarily meet.
Well, there's definitely a middle ground, because like a good example I could give you is like the game Heavy Rain by Quantic Dream. I'm not going to open the can of worms about plot holes, so I'm not even going to go there. But it's essentially a choose-your-own-adventure story, but you're more active in it, so you actually control the characters, you control their choices. And the choices actually matter. There's like 24 different endings that can happen, and you're controlling you're controlling 4 different characters as the story progresses. I highly recommend the game.
Is that an old PlayStation game?
It was a PlayStation 3 game. Yeah, they remastered it for the 4, so if you want to get it on the PlayStation 4, you can. But yeah, that game had a lot of choices that actually matter. If you don't know the premise, there's a serial killer called the Origami Killer, and he kills kids. And he does this by whenever the big spring rain is coming, he puts them somewhere that's open to the rain. And as the days progress, the level of the water rises, and then eventually this kid will drown. And the way to save him is it's a very sadistic test for the father So he gives clues. He sends clues to the parents, or specifically the dad, and then he has to go through all these trials and tests on what he would do to save his kid. And every time he completes a test, he's given part of the hangman, which is like like the old hangman games. You get a letter, then it fills in the address of where his son's located. So essentially, you can complete the hangman without having to do all the choices. Like there's some outcomes where if you, like for example, one of the outcomes was you have to kill a guy. Mm-hmm. And if you can't do it, if you couldn't do it, then you go back to your car and you don't have the new clues. But if you've done like all the other ones, you can look at the address and sort of make a discernible choice. Okay, this kind of matches, and they even put a choice for you on a map. Like it kind of matches these 3 locations, but then that's a gamble. It's like which one is it? Mm-hmm. And you could potentially choose the right one and be like, oh, good guess, or you go to the wrong one and then it shows you arriving there and it's like a mall, and then he starts freaking out because he made the wrong choice.
That's the end.
Right. Well, for him, it could be the end for him. There's other characters that could have potentially find the kid as well.
Interesting.
But also the other aspect is all of these characters can die at any point in the story. And when they die, there is no coming back. You continue through the story with the 3 remaining characters, and then it goes from there. Potentially all 4 can die.
Right.
And then the kid dies, obviously, because there's no one there to find him. So, yeah, that's one of those where it didn't feel like a game. It was more like a very interactive movie.
That's what Telltale games are?
Yeah, Telltale is very similar. Like, you control the character and then you make your choices. There's a lot more dialogue choices in that one. Whereas I think Heavy Rain, they're still in the same vein as far as the type. But Heavy Rain had a lot more like... Well, no, I take that back. They're about the same. They are about the same with the types of choices. They could be something as simple as a dialogue, or they could be an action. So it's like someone has one of your companions, held hostage, and it's like, okay, do you do... And doing nothing is also a choice at any point. You can just not do anything. Uh-huh. So you could do nothing, put your gun down, or take the shot. And then take the shot doesn't always mean you're going to succeed. Like you might choose, I'm going to take the shot and save them, and you go boom, and you accidentally shoot them, like wing them in the shoulder or something, and then it starts a gunfight. And even though at the end of that choice, the bad guys are, they're dead, and your companion is safe, but they might come back and you're like, oh, you shot me, you idiot, and then it's like, okay, now your relationship is down. And it's like,
interesting.
So there's a lot of dynamics, and I don't think the choose your own adventure type style of game is going to go away. There's definitely ones that have done it better than others, but I love them. I think they're a great way to tell a story as opposed to playing the character throughout and then having a set storyline from beginning to end.
So those kind of games sound pretty similar to the movie experience. It's a little bit more than passive because you are actually making the decisions, but you're not involved in the shootouts mechanically where you're actually pulling the guns and firing the shots and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I hear about it probably more in the movie space than I hear about it in the gaming space, because in some ways I feel like gaming has kind of already married storytelling with being interactive. And I don't know if what movie viewers want is something more interactive, because if they do, there's gaming already. But then I think about like augmented reality and virtual reality and the way that you could integrate those into movies, but eventually you're just going to get to where it's a game again.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know what I mean?
That's pretty much how that is and how it's going to be. I don't think gaming as a medium is going to go anywhere.
No.
The only thing that can change is how you interact with the medium. So, there's 3D, there's the controllers, being able to move within a game space is one. And virtual reality is definitely there. But at the end of the day, like, there's people that just want to watch something, and there's people that want to interact with something. And I'm definitely one of those. I enjoy movies, but you give me a chance to control a character and experience a story, I'm going to choose that.
Do you remember, of course you remember, Dragon's Lair?
Yeah.
That was a very, as far as a game went, it barely worked, but it was so cool in the arcade.
It was one of those that, it kind of pandered to, do you want to play a cartoon? Because you can now play a cartoon.
Yeah. You get
and
one button.
Yeah.
Boots.
It was a reflex game, so it was like you make the right choice and you have to do it at the right time, and otherwise you're dead. It was a very unforgiving game at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think that's not too far off of an extension of interactive storytelling.
Do you remember Mad Dog McCree?
No.
It was a Western game, and they did that same the technique that they used in Pit Fighter that they then went on to use in Mortal Kombat. It was motion capture, but it was like digitized, like
okay. So
footage,
it was
basically.
live action footage, but then they projected it on a 2D space.
Correct, and
Right.
it was a shooting game, and that was really cool. But then I remember, and this is I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a dome. And they had holographic characters on the inside of it. And it was available in arcades. And I think it was like a shootout game. But back in the early 90s, they were already trying to mess with those kind of different formats.
Area 51 had
Area
live
51,
action, had live action people in it. There's other games. Yeah, Mortal Kombat definitely. They used motion capture on a green screen, and then they just translated that.
That was Mortal Kombat's thing for so long. And then I remember when they switched to 3D and when Mortal Kombat 4, just feeling like this isn't Mortal Kombat anymore. And now, we're up to Mortal Kombat 11 or X, whatever it is. And I still love those games, but they're just like the thing that separated Mortal Kombat from Street Fighter for so long.
Was the distinct look. Yeah. Yeah, now it's just like any typical fighting game, just more gory.
Yeah, real gory.
It doesn't really phase people now because that Mortal Kombat had that controversy being gory, and now it's like no one bats an eye to it anymore.
As hard as they want to push it,
and
they do some really gross stuff in it, it just doesn't have the same impact.
They do. Now people are just like, oh, how gross can you make it? And I'm curious to know when that line is going to get crossed, where people are like, okay, no.
Sexual violence is the only place that you're going to find it. And even that you get away with in a lot of games.
Yeah. You do have female characters in Mortal Kombat, so sometimes it's like, like you watch and you're just like, okay, that fatality on that character is kind of questionable. Yeah. But, okay, that happened.
Did you ever get into that series?
Mortal Kombat? Yeah, for
That's
a little
one of
bit.
My favorites.
Me and my brother used to be big on fighting games, back when we were living together, because it was like one of the few games these generations that have couch the ability to play on a couch together.
Yeah,
because most games now it's like, oh, you want to play a game? Okay, you go home and I'll see you when you get online. God, yeah, we have this generation. We have the biggest TVs, no split screen.
No, right. Back in the day, splitting a screen was kind of a mess, and like you'd have your 3:4 aspect ratio or 4:3, whatever it is, and then split in the middle where each person's got about this much screen.
Yep. But God forbid you played 4 people and then you have the cross, and it's like, don't watch my screen. I'm not watching your screen. I'm totally watching.
Oh yeah, GoldenEye in particular.
Yeah. But now we have, again, huge TVs where if you split the screen, it's like, I still have a 30-inch screen over here to play with. But it's like, no, if you want to play games, you have to go and go get an internet connection. Like, here's the crazy thing. I had a friend come over. My friend Sam came over to my house a couple nights ago, or last weekend, and he brought his PlayStation. How crazy is that? We want to play a game together. I'm going to bring my entire console. And we have to share an internet connection, so we can play together. And it's just like,
what was the game?
Apex.
Apex?
Yeah, he got me into Apex a little bit.
I haven't played it.
I'm not big on the battle royale games. There's definitely a skill involved. Being knowing how to play the game proficiently, knowing how to shoot very well, and understanding the map and understanding all the different weapons.
Where to drop into the map at.
Yeah. There's definitely a strategy to the game that I do enjoy, but honestly, I'm just not very good.
No, that was my thing with Fortnite. I enjoy it, but I started like years after everybody had been playing. Yeah. So proficiency, they're all so good. Yeah. And I'm just a target. I'm like a sitting duck,
It's Fortnite's that game where it's like you can sneak up on somebody and start shooting him, and he turns into a wall, and now you have this wall to contend with, or they could just start building something, and it's just
going up to the sky, just
Yeah.
constantly running. Yeah, I like those. And then the other games that I play quite a bit are League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm, all
I don't
of
even
those
touch any
kind of
those.
games.
I don't touch any of those.
How come?
It's just not for me.
Yeah.
Again, I'm very much a immersive type of gamer. Like I want to. Again, nothing wrong with those games. If you have fun with those games, by all means,
No,
keep
it's
playing
just taste.
them.
Yeah.
It's just it just they're just not for me. That's all. And I prefer to have a game where there's a bit of story. And I'm sure someone could argue, oh, there is a story.
It's not in the game though.
Yeah.
If you read the
You
character
read the thing,
stuff.
yeah. Or sometimes they'll have an event that ties into a character's story, and those are cool. It's just I prefer a game where it's like, okay, I'm actively getting some bit of story out of it. Like right now, I just started Division 2, mainly because I love the world that they've created. Where in Division 2, it falls on that what if factor. If a disease were to knock the nation out of its cycle, so it's like after one day, all the infrastructure goes down. We shut down airports, so then things can't be transported. We can't get supplies where they need to go. The government goes down, and then all the networks go down. So there's no more wireless. There's none of this. So everything pretty much goes down to basics. How long before the country just implodes on itself and turns into anarchy? All because of one single disease gets released.
And that's the storyline.
Yeah.
What are the mechanics of it? Is it like third person?
It's a third person military shooter, so it's very tactical based. People are bullet sponges, so it's not like you shoot a guy in the head and he goes down, and that's one of the bigger complaints because there's an RPG element to it, so it's about stat building and having the best gear in relation to the enemy. So if you're like a level 2 and you're going up against a level 6, it might be a bit more difficult.
Yeah.
So it's about scavenging and getting supplies. But the main draw for me is the story. I like that kind of a storyline because you play as the title suggests, you are a part of a division that is more or less awoken whenever this type of scenario happens. So your job is to restore order and bring back, more or less make sure the government stands and that things don't go into anarchy. So you're there more or less like the almost like a judge, because you can just go into a firefight and be like, oh yeah, you guys got to die, and just take out an entire squad. But I don't know, I like that the level of weight that you carry as a character, because that's a lot of responsibility, and that's you taking care of people.
I think one of the things about the
my nose is really itchy. I'm sorry, guys.
There's almost like a homogenization of what I felt like is all of the open world third person games started to get pretty samey, but the storylines will always, I guess, kind of differentiate one from the other. But I do think that's kind of the value of a lot of the indie developers coming onto the scene and doing very unconventional, kind of quirky games in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even the Battle Royale were kind of birthed out of like, I don't know exactly when they date to, but I remember like when, Dead Rising was one of the kind of, there was Grand Theft Auto, Dead Rising, the first Red Dead Redemption. There were a lot of games in that same little area that really just opened up the games to you, and then all of a sudden everything's free roaming, everything's third person, and there just kind of got to be a sameness of it where, especially if you're like a gun carrying person.
Yeah. Which again, you walk into a game store, put your hand out blindfold. You'll more than likely pick up a game where you're running around with a gun and there's explosions.
And where Spider-Man, obviously you're swinging around between buildings and all of the powers
different.
that come along with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That makes it a very unique experience. I guess Red Dead has got the gimmick of being, in the West, and then having all of the having to keep yourself maintained and all of that, So I see how people are trying to keep them fresh and keep them new, but do you think that this idea of virtual reality is ever going to overtake that experience?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I honestly doubt it. I think virtual reality is a great medium for experiencing things. Like, I've had a lot of amazing experiences in virtual reality that I would not have experienced otherwise. Like, a good example, I was at a friend's house and I played Ace Combat, I think 7 it is, the most recent one. And that's a plane. That's a jet fighter plane. And it's in VR.
That's
and
badass.
He also had the HOTAS, the hand on a throttle and stick controls. So you control the thrust, you control the maneuvering with this, and you have the trigger so you can fire machine gun missiles. And
you look down and see it?
Yeah.
Okay,
no, the game
cool.
starts, like I put the headset on and having your hands like this and you're ready to go. And there's nowhere else you can get the feeling than in VR than when you're like starting a game, especially a game like Ace Combat, where you're sitting in a cockpit and then the game loads and you're there in the cockpit and you can go, oh, and then you're watching the plane getting lifted up onto the top of an aircraft carrier,
awesome.
and you look over and you see all the crew and they're like waving you in and everything, and then it's about time for you to go, and you push the thrust all the way forward, you get the jerk of everything moving forward, and then you're in the air, and then like every time I'm in any kind of flight game, I have to do a barrel roll. But to be in VR and to be like,
do a barrel
roll, and I look up and I see the ground as it spins around me, and then I get into a dogfight and I'm flying, and then a missile lock on, and then I do a maneuver and I do a twist down, and then I look up and I see the guy coming after me.
That is
and I'm just
awesome.
like, okay, and I can look behind me and see him behind me, and I can just pull the thrust down, pull it back, and then just go straight up as he goes by me, and then just go out. There's no other experience for something like that. But that's a very
excited thinking about it.
Yeah, but that's a very specific experience, like because it's a plane, it's a jet. If they would do, Disney needs to take the Star Wars licensing for games away from EA and give it to whoever makes Ace Combat or anyone else really, because I will die happy if I could get, and there already is one exists, but I want a whole game, a VR X-Wing fighter game.
Yeah. They
already have a version of that in Battlefront 1, but it was just like a 10-minute mission, and that's it. That's all there was. And I love it. In fact, I don't like Battlefront. It's one of those multiplayer games. There's no story in Battlefront 1, so there's no reason for me to keep playing it. But I have it saved on my PlayStation simply because of that X-Wing mission.
It's a VR X-Wing mission?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
I didn't got to do that. The only time I ever did VR was over at your place.
Yeah.
I did Ghostbusters, and that was like, I just remember like just being broken by the idea of it. I was like, this is amazing. And it's such a simple little, I only played it for 10 minutes or something, but it really is, it's a unique experience. You're just not spatially aware when you're in it. I mean, you're especially aware of this virtual world construct around you.
Right.
But I think some people do want the more casual experience sometimes, you know?
There's a lot of other ways to do VR. I don't think the potential of VR has reached its peak yet. I think there's a lot of ground to cover when it comes to VR becoming a more serious thing. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of games out there that do great. There's one game on the PlayStation VR library that I really enjoy, and it's called Static. Static with a K, not a C. Mm-hmm. And it's just a puzzle game. All it is a puzzle game, and it's one of those easy to acclimate someone to VR because there's not a lot of movement. You don't even use the motion controllers. You're just sitting in a chair, and you're holding a PlayStation controller. But in the VR world, when you load into a game, your hands are in a box. And you can, the way it looks, it feels constraining. Like even though your hands are not physically in a box, when you're in VR and you look down at your hands and you don't let go of the controller, as long as you don't let go of the controller, the illusion stays there. But if you keep your hand on the controller, when I do this, it's tracking the controller's gyroscope. So then the box turns, and the puzzle is the box. So if you turn it like this and upside down, there's parts on the box, and the different buttons on the controller, the analog sticks and everything, do something on the box. And it's some combination of button presses that will unlock the box. But when you're holding it in VR, it's hard to explain, but when I'm looking at the box and I'm pushing buttons and it does something, because I can't see my fingers doing something, but I'm actually doing something, it feels like my hand is in a box. So then it almost creates a sense of claustrophobia.
That's cool.
Because you're constrained. And you can look around, you can look in the room, and sometimes the clues to solve it are in the room. So you're looking, it's like, okay, I need to match. So when I hit this button, it does this on the box, and I need it to match what that does. So if I hit this button, it does, and then you do different combinations of button presses, holds, releases. You can wind something up with the analog stick, and then you solve the puzzle. And it's like, okay, cool, and then you go to a different one. And yeah, that's a really good one.
That's a smart way of utilizing the technology. That's different too. Right,
and it's simple. But the execution is where it's at. With any kind of entertainment and gaming, the execution's always the thing. That's why with open world games, a lot of games are definitely in the same vein of being the same. Oh, it's an open world game, you're shooting, you can drive cars, cool. But how do they execute it? Is the driving mechanic good? Is the shooting mechanic good? Is getting around the world boring?
Yeah.
Is the world too big? Is the world too small? The execution's always the biggest thing. But then, even then, at least for me, if the execution isn't even perfect, if the story or if the reason why the world is the way it is good, I'm sold. That's pretty much it.
Top Gun VR. That would be dope. I'm trying to think of the guy. I already ruined the joke because I couldn't think of his name, but the Highway to the Danger Zone guy.
I can't even remember. I can't even remember right now off the top of my head.
I know they're doing another one. That would be so badass, though. Like, that flight simulation sounds amazing in VR. Underwater exploration would be really cool.
Any VR game where you don't have to stand and do a lot, the immersion is 100 times better. So, like, the flight sim, that's really good because you're just sitting down. And it's just the immersion's there because it's just a matter of, like, visually looking around your environment. And even some games, I forget that I can do that. Like, there's some shooting games where before I had the gun controller, if I'm just playing like this, I feel like I'm just playing a normal video game. So if something happens, I'm just looking forward. I keep forgetting, like, oh, right, I could peek around this corner before I jump around it. But then Firewall is a VR game that comes with a game controller, and I'm playing that with friends. And, dude, that's like Siege, but in VR, 4v4, and probably my favorite shooting game ever as far as VR space, because I'll never forget the moment I was playing with my friend from GameStop, and we're in an area that looks like one of those training facilities where all the walls are wood, and then there's different rooms and hallways and whatnot, and there's no ceiling. So it looks like one of those training things. I forget what they're called, but we're playing, and we're clearing the hallways room by room, and we are just like tactical as shit. Like, I'm going up to a door like I would in real life, and you move with the analog sticks on the controller, but you where you aim the gun is where you're shooting. And you can even like aim it, and if you have like a red dot scope or a red dot, you can actually see it. So you can actually aim for real with the controller. I'm like going up to a door, posting up, checking left, checking right, clear. He walks in, I go in behind him. It's a hallway. We're going this way. Okay, and then we're going back to back down the hallway. I'm walking backwards.
That's great.
But I'm still looking over my shoulder and back down the gun sights, looking over back, making sure we're both clear. Door, okay, then I get in position. He clears the door, and dude, it's so good.
I want to play.
It's so good.
We're going to wrap this up. See you guys later. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, like I was saying, it takes a lot for me to not like something. The execution has to be piss poor if I'm not going to find some kind of enjoyment out of some type of content.
I appreciate that, and maybe it is as a content creator. I almost don't like when you say that you're able to separate yourself from that. From the expectation, from the anticipation, from the hype and the buzz and all that, I almost feel like, is it even, maybe different people have a different capacity for it, but I feel like the human reaction is to carry all of those things in with you and then try to have to strip it away, you know?
Yeah, well, I can't blame your average person. I say that as if there's a difference in people. I'm sorry, but I can't blame a person for, like, let's say going into a movie and not enjoying it because they have, like, especially I'll use Marvel superhero movies as an example. If they like a character because of one reason in their origin story, and they know the character from like a comic book medium, and now they're watching on the big screen and they make some changes, that's something I understand. If it's like the one thing you liked about the character
isn't there anymore,
then it's like, well, I don't like it. And that's not saying that, and that's where I think that a big disconnect is. I don't think a movie is bad because it's bad. I think people say a movie's bad because what they enjoyed out of a character or out of a story that they're basing it from isn't there. It's something they liked isn't there. That doesn't, but, and that might, and sometimes that holds the same true for me. Like, I might like Spider-Man. Okay, here's a good example. I'm a big Spider-Man fan, obviously. And then when you go to The Amazing Spider-Man, which I personally don't think is a bad film.
Sure.
But there's elements that I personally disagree with when it comes to the
characterization of Peter Parker in particular, right?
Yeah, especially Peter, because it's like I knew I had a disconnect in the point where Peter was defending a nerd from Flash instead of being the nerd that Flash is picking on. And I'm like, Peter's not this cool. Like, that's the thing that makes Peter relatable. To pull from the exact reason why Stan Lee made Peter the way he is Peter has a problem with dandruff. Peter has a problem paying his bills. Peter has a problem, maintaining his relationships. And he did that because it's something that people can relate to. Mm-hmm. So when Amazing Spider-Man comes in and Peter's this really cool skateboardy guy, it's like, I don't relate to this guy at all.
I don't know how to skateboard.
Yeah, I do. But I'm like, I was never the cool kid. Like, I was never the one that was like trying to tell bullies to shove it. And, I was the one being bullied. So
on
it's
a
like
separate but same note, Spider-Man's suit in Homecoming. I had a hard time reconciling that with all of the technology. And because of my relationship or my understanding of who this character was, it wasn't hard for me. I bought into it eventually, but at first I'm like, well, that's Iron Man. That's not even like a Spider-Man thing, you know?
No, I kind of had the same thoughts with it because, again, that's kind of one of the traits of Peter Parker, and what kind of makes him endearing is that he did everything himself, and that he's a smart kid. Like that's there's no denying that he is a smart individual, and so him building his own web shooters and creating his own suit is part of the charm. That it's all him. There's no help there's no Alfred or anything,
right?
He's just the one guy, and that's what makes him relatable, is because he has all this internal turmoil of trying to keep his relationships as Peter Parker and Spider-Man together, but he has the weight of being Spider-Man wholeheartedly on himself. So I had a hard time acclimating that as well when it was, okay, he's pretty much Tony Stark's apprentice almost. Tony Stark's giving him all this gear so that he can do his thing more efficiently. Didn't know how to feel about that. The thing I do like is they didn't play down his smarts. He's still a smart kid. Sure. The one thing, the solace that I found is that with the Homecoming suit, they solved something that the previous Spider-Man films couldn't do.
We're talking about articulated eyes.
The ability to emote while in the suit, because that's something that the people in the comics kind of had up their sleeve. So when Spider-Man in the comics, or even in the animated film, the Spider-Verse film, when they emote, the eyes move. So if he's got the eyebrow up, the one eye is bigger than the other, and you can tell what kind of emotion he's expressing facially. But then when you have Amazing Spider-Man and the original Raimi Spider-Man films, it's just a lens, so you don't see it. So it's really bland when it's like you see like Spider-Man scream Mary Jane, but then the mask is static.
Dead face.
So it's just like
that's a good point.
There's a bit of disconnect, but you're willing to let that go because there's a realism there. It's like, okay, in real life the lenses wouldn't move. If he's making it himself, there's no way. I mean, well, I digress. Peter being smart, I'm sure he could have figured out a way, but let's not go there. But for the sense of realism, the lenses shouldn't move in real life. They should just be a lens. But then that leads to the whole, like, every Spider-Man film in the third act, Spider-Man has to take his mask off.
100%.
Or the mask gets destroyed. And it's like, I really not like seeing that all the time being a trope, even though they do it in Homecoming. But
I love Homecoming also, by the way. I'm not down on the movie. Just that was something that it's kind of the idea of what we take in from our fandom. And like you said, changing the one minor thing. And I think that's kind of on the micro. And when you step back and look at the macro, one of the most toxic experiences, I know everything always circles back around to Star Wars, but the amount of entitlement and ownership that certain people have felt over Star Wars has turned it into something that, like, it used to be fun and like connected everybody, and now people are just so...
I understand a lot of the stress a lot of people have being a fan of something and then something changing.
Have Hell, we talk about it with YouTube videos or whatever content. You know?
Exactly. There's a lot of media. Change happens in every medium. Don't care what you say. Either a new writer comes in and changes something because they see it artistically different. I mean, look at Tim Burton's Batman and how Gotham looks, and how stylized those are as compared to Nolan, which is a more realistic tone. But it's again, it comes back to what I was saying earlier with being a content creator. There's intention when it comes to putting those things together, and that's why, like, some people I prefer the Tim Burton look of Gotham. Oh, I prefer Christopher Nolan's look of Batman or whatever, and those are legitimate opinions. No one is really wrong in that. I don't believe it just boils down to taste and what you enjoy, but also on the creator side of it, it's what you intended to do. So when I experience these films, even though they're very different from one another, it's like, okay, this is what they were going for. I can go with this. But whereas if you come in and you shut all that out, like, that's not Gotham. Gotham shouldn't look like that. It's like, it might not be the Gotham that you want, but the tone and the aesthetic look of it, this is what the director was going for. So if you just sort of turn that around and be more open to seeing it in that light, I think people could enjoy things a lot more. I think that's my biggest frustration, especially with gaming, especially with friends that are like, I like the game because of explosions. You know, or I don't like this game because it's single player. And it's just like, I get it. I get that maybe it's not your thing, but sometimes their reason is so minuscule that I'm just like, if you just let the one thing go, there's so much enjoyment you can have. There's so much fun to be had with so many different things, but because you put this either expectation or this need from a game that you personally want, this need that must be in the game that you can enjoy, so that you can enjoy it. There's so many things you're locking yourself out of.
Yeah, for sure.
There's so many things that are like, this is fun, but because you happen to not like the fact that you can't play as this type of character, you hate it. It's like, no, just cool your jets, go in and have fun with the game. And if it's really not for you because of, you just don't like the look, or, oh no, I take that back. Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't like the look of the game. Like, a good example is Life is Strange, which is a very Telltale type game. Yeah. You're going to go in that game and there's a very hard disconnect to get over because the mouth sync is horrible. Like, that they don't have the mouth sync very well in that game. It's kind of jarring in some points. The characters still emote, they still express, but just the mouth doesn't sync with the words. And that was something that I had to contend with, but the story and the experiences that you go through in that game, I ignore it.
I watched Giallo films from the 70s when they didn't record any audio on set, and then they would go and dub it all in post in 5 different languages. Yeah. And we love anime growing up, so I don't have a problem with that kind of thing. We're kind of acclimated to it.
There's certain things that people can overlook to enjoy something, and it's weird to see how someone might overlook one thing in one medium, like anime, for example. They'll overlook that in one medium, but then you throw that in a different medium and it's like, oh, this is bad. And it's like, what are you talking about? It's kind of the same, but just, okay, it's a different medium. Just think of it in that kind of perspective.
As collectors of comics that have been doing it for a while, I think you also have that understanding about intent and how if you're so married to one version of Batman, you're going to get say 100 issues, and then it's a new writer, a new illustrator, and now that's not my Batman. It's like, no, you just take it for what it is, and you understand that everybody kind of puts their own different slant on it. Because like you said, it's like we each focus in on the things that resonate inside of ourselves about characters, and we bring those to the forefront. For example, how much different the original Batman was for a long time, and then the way that Frank Miller saw Batman. Yeah, that's a good the reinvention of him as this fascist, and I don't really like Frank Miller's version of Batman. Yeah. That said, he is kind of responsible for both Tim Burton's and Christopher Nolan's, both of which I did like.
Yeah, it's.
Frank Miller's Batman is a dick. Yeah. That's my biggest problem.
He is. There's no telling that. But to me, it's one of those how do I put this? I get it. It's fine because you also have a choice. You have an absolute choice to go and watch something or read something or play something, and if you don't like it, you have a choice to just not do it. Like it's okay to say, I didn't like this run of Batman because I didn't like the writing, so but I really like this one. And that's fine. What's not okay is when you go, this is the worst, no one should read it. It's like, no, just stop, because what you might not like, someone else might like.
Yeah.
And also, if you close yourself off to that sort of thing, there's a lot of things that you might, miss out on. And to me, that's the biggest disservice you can do to yourself. Then I'm sure there's people that are like, Ray, you're such a hypocrite. Because there are some things where I'm just like, I don't know if I want to jump in on that because of X. And I should heed my own advice and go through with it. But sometimes it's one of those where it's like, I want to do it on my own time. I will.
Yeah, sure.
Anything that I've said, I don't want to do it because of X, I probably am still open to doing it. It's one of those, there has to be an opportune moment for me to do it, or something like, oh, I'll do it with somebody. Sure. Okay, I'll do it then. Here's a good example. For the longest time, I did not want to watch Princess Bride.
It's a bad choice, Ray.
Yeah, when my wife and I met, I had not seen the movie. She asked me if I seen it. I said no, and she said, "Do you want to see it?" And honestly, it was really just because of how I saw it, like on the cover. And I know, don't judge a book by its cover. I wasn't opposed to seeing it, but my contention was just like, it looks like an old love story, and it's an older film, so I'm like, I don't know if I'd like it. But everyone kept saying, no, it's a funny movie, and the story is actually really good, and it really is. It's a great movie, but that's one of those things where I was like, I don't feel like watching it right now because I don't know what to expect. But I was still open to watching it, and eventually it got to where, okay, Tiff bought it, I'll give it a watch, and I'm like, I feel so stupid for putting this off. And that's what I mean. That's a good example of you're doing a disservice to yourself if you don't try things.
And that's, as a movie reviewer, when I say something is bad and then somebody says, oh, I was thinking about seeing it, I would never say, I think it's bad, you should not go see it.
Right.
I would never, ever, ever say that. My experience could be 100% different than yours. If you're interested in it, go see it, and then let me know whether or not you liked it. Because I'm not I'm not the end-all, be-all
no one is
of
that.
taste. You know what I mean? Like,
no
what
one
do
is
I know
that.
about taste?
There's a thing with reviews, and this is why I hate reviews. Even though you look at my YouTube channel, I have a review for Spider-Man. But I think there's a way of being able to properly express objectively why you like something, and then expressing that it is just your opinion, and then these are the reasons why. And then what that does is that just boils down to, well, does someone share those things? Like if someone, like for the Spider-Man review that I did, like I like the web swinging and I like the story. So if someone is looking for an opinion of that, and that's what they're looking for, then maybe my opinion of it could help push them to want to buy the game. Or if they're worried about something, like in the case of Anthem and me, like my concern is the story good? So I'm watching a bunch of different reviews, and if they're not talking about the story so much, they're talking about gameplay, I'm like, okay, I don't need to worry about this one. Then I find someone that does mention something I need. So there is a place for reviews, but I find too often than not, there's too many people that go out to say, that are not objective. They say, this is bad, don't get it. And it's like, I think that's unfair because, like, again, I'll use Anthem as an example. I personally don't want to get Anthem because I don't feel it has a strong enough story, and what they said way back when is what they delivered. But I recognize that there's enough of a game there that there's people enjoying the game. Like my friend at GameStop loves Anthem to death. And honestly, who am I to tell him the game sucks because the story isn't what they wanted, and they didn't do this, and this.
That said, it is in my mind, it's fair for you to say, I think that game is total garbage because this, and this. Right. As long as you're not imposing your will or your views onto other people, right?
Well, even then, I feel like I'm not helping.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I definitely fall into those. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. Because
I'm not that guy.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those where if someone comes up to me and says, "I love Suicide Squad. It's the best movie ever," And who the hell am I to say, well, I didn't like it because this and this and this and this and the photography and all like and the costume, all of it is bad. Like,
but
who
what
am I,
if you
who
end
am I
it
to say
with,
that to somebody?
But why do you think it's awesome?
Right. Well, that's a good point. Like, if you're willing to go through and objectively have a conversation about it, that's one thing. But if someone just says, "Oh, I happen to like Suicide Squad," that's it. That's it. We're not trying to have a conversation.
Yeah.
You're just being a jerk at that point.
Yeah.
So if someone says, so if we're just saying, "Okay, hey, quick, what's your favorite movie? X. What's your favorite movie? X. What's your favorite? Oh, I love Suicide Squad." Okay, that's it. You don't have to go, "You're stupid."
Yeah. Right.
Unless I'm with a group of friends and I'm just playing. I don't want to be that guy that's just like, okay, that's like, and legitimately tell somebody the reason they like something is bad. I may have an opinion. I might say it in my head, like I might be in my head going, I question your taste in movies.
Yeah.
But I would never tell somebody that and take joy away from something they genuinely like.
That's a really good point, and I agree with that. I think that and it's interesting, but I think it's universal that we feel a connection to our preferences and our taste, and it's like, if you say just using Suicide Squad for example, if I say Suicide Squad sucks, then there's an implication that I'm saying your taste or your preferences suck. Yeah. And maybe that is kind of part of what you're not meaning to say, right? But maybe there is a kernel of that in it.
Well, to combat sort of what you said earlier, like with like, I could tell you why I don't like something, and then end it with, "Why do you like it?" My objection to that is, don't worry about telling anyone your opinion if it's bad. So in that same instance, if someone's like, "I like Suicide Squad, I think it's the best movie ever," I'll be like, "Okay, yeah, why do you think that?" Like, I would genuinely want to know what aspects of it you liked, and they might go, "Did you not like it?" It's like, no, that's not important. I want to know why you liked it. And have them express it, because a lot of people like to express why they like things. So it turns into, instead of it being a conversation or even an argument, it's just like, sell me on it. Sell me on why you like that. And that's something I appreciate when it's like, for example, I like Uncharted. So, because I love talking about Uncharted. This is my favorite series of all time. And so someone's like, "Oh, why did you like Uncharted?" "Oh, okay, sit down. I have a lot to say." But then if someone's like, "Oh, Uncharted's horrible, it's just a story-based game," and it's just like, why dude? Like, what did that add?
I get it. I think I like ball busting. I think there's an element of that into it, because it would have to be a movie buff friend, because there are so many times that I would want to soften the blow.
It depends on the company which you have.
Okay.
Which I understand. Trust me, I bust my friends' balls all the time.
Yeah. Even me and you, for sure.
But it's, if I were like in a movie theater and we just like walked out of Captain Marvel and let's say I haven't seen the movie yet. This is just all speculation. Let's say I didn't like it, but then someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, that movie was the best." I'm not about to go, "You're an idiot." It's...
does it kill the vibe? Like, say me and you and Tiff and Victoria all went and saw Captain Marvel, and we came out... I think I know the answer to this. We came out, 3 out of 4 of us really enjoyed it. I think it stinks. Should I have to, like... When everybody's like, "What did you think about the movie?" Should I have to be like, "Oh, it was okay," or should I... Because I went and saw Alita Battle Angel... I thought it stunk. Victoria, Brienne, and Holden all thought it was great. We went and saw Captain Marvel with a couple other people the other night. They all thought it was good. I thought it stunk. And I don't know. I mean, I like what I like, and I'm unapologetic about that. But I don't want to suck the air or the fun out of the room just by being negative.
I can understand the other side of that as well. Like, when you're one of the people that don't happen to like something that's popular, it's almost like you're in a shady group of this, like, it's like those posts where it's like, unpopular opinion, I like Nickelback. Or something where it's like you feel like you're in this minority and you feel like you can't express yourself. No, I feel like you can. You shouldn't feel like you need to censor yourself by any means, even though that's kind of what I was going with earlier. But I feel like that's a personal preference.
Yeah, right.
Like, for me, this is just me. This is how I feel. For sure. I never want to be in a position where I'm taking away how someone feels from something. I don't. If we're having a conversation and someone's expressing how much they love something, even if it's something I absolutely hate, the most you'll probably get out of me is, "It just wasn't for me. I recognize people like it. That's all, and that's all you get." I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to say you're an idiot. I'm not going to say, I might have feelings in my head, but that's not for me to throw on you. And even those feelings that I have in my head, it's not one of those where I'm like, you're on a list now or anything. It's like, no, it's nothing I would never hold against someone personally.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, you like this. Honestly, it might be one of those, I won't go see a movie with you, maybe.
And I think if we agree 4 out of 5 times, that one discrepancy isn't like a deal breaker for me. Like if people like, I have a very particular taste in movies. When I went and saw Hereditary, I wouldn't expect other people to necessarily have the same respect or adulation for it. But I think a lot of us, like, I love mermaids. I've always loved mermaids. So anytime a mermaid movie comes out, because I'm interested in the subject, I go and I enjoy
mythology
it.
And everything.
Right. And that would be, and I'm just using mermaids as a random example, but for comic book movies or Star Wars or whatever the thing is. And then there's somebody who like, sounds fucking pretentious, but somebody that's kind of more of a student of film, that's looking for the sound design, that's looking for the levels of the
really
mixing,
pretentious, dude. That's really pretentious. I'm just kidding.
Composition of the shots, lighting, direction of the actors, emotional performances.
Yeah.
That applies across the board. It doesn't matter if it's mermaids that I'm the most interested in or politics, let's just say, that I have no interest in.
Yeah.
It becomes more about the craft than about the subject.
Right. Even then, that's also something that you can almost look at and find that you have to disassociate to enjoy something. Because trust me, I'm the same way. Like, I'll look at something and I'll make a comment to Tiff like, "Oh, I love how they shot that," and she's like, "Shut up." You know? Yeah. So,
Victoria,
I get it.
It's all one take. It's all one take.
Oh my God, this is amazing. Do you realize that it's all one take? It's just like, I don't understand what you're saying.
I don't even care.
I just want to watch the movie. Stop jabbing me in the side. It's I get it, but that's, I enjoy movies in my own way, and I have my own reasons. But there is a level to which I, as excited I can get for movies, I usually go in with a very, objective slate and in enjoying it. So I don't want to like go into a movie, even though I'm super pumped for it. I don't want to be like, okay, this is gonna be the best movie ever. I'm just like, let's see what they have for me. And I find I enjoy more movies that way than going in and going like, I expect this one thing to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that narrows your enjoyment down, because if you're like focusing on this one thing, like superhero movies, again, as an example, let's say like Spider-Man. Okay, Spider-Man has to do this one pose, and if you don't do it, it's not a Spider-Man movie. And it's like, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you waste an hour and a half, 2 hours of your time expecting one thing to happen, and that one thing being the discernible thing or the definitive thing to make that movie good to you? It's like, okay, so fuck story or everything. Sorry, can I swear on this?
Yeah, of course.
Fuck
Please.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like if that's the case, then just go look at a promotional poster. There's the pose. Cool.
Yeah.
Enjoy the movie now. The more you make a list of why the movie needs to be good, the more you're holding yourself back from enjoying something.
And also, like with Star Wars, to come back around to that, like we see the past through rose-colored glasses. You're not watching movies as critically as a 5-year-old as you are as a 35-year-old.
Yeah,
so when you're watching The Last Jedi and you're like, oh, the stuff on Canto Bight was kiddie, it's like, well, what you're doing right now is you're cutting the little Fraggle puppet that was Jabba's buddy out of The Last Jedi, or out of Return of the Jedi.
Right.
You're omitting these certain things that were extremely kiddie and pedantic from these old movies because you remember them as something that it's like a personal connection that you have to it.
Right.
But then when you're so hard on these movies now, it's like they're kind of made for kids. Like you're tearing this thing down.
Right.
And yes, the Skywalker saga in The Last Jedi is so much more effective to me than the Canto Bight stuff and the DJ key maker guy and all of that. But what they're trying to do with 4-quadrant movies is hit all 4 quadrants. So they've got storyline A that's for the old head Star Wars fans, right? Like it's got Luke Skywalker in it.
Well, it's almost to the point of like pandering, where it's like we want everyone to enjoy it, and I'm just like, that's all well and good. I love that I love the fact that they have the fans in mind, even though the fans might not even know what they like, or they want something that's way too high to achieve.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're like, we want to do this, and they have thought for the fans, even though it's not something the fans might want, that's more effort I would give them than most other places. I prefer, even though me personally, I prefer for them to be like, not necessarily, we don't care what the fans thinks, but just like, this is what visually and constructively I think this story should play out, and this is how it should look.
I think that's the difference between JJ and Rian Johnson. I think JJ is very much the fan, and Rian Johnson was like, I'm a fan, but let's turn it on its head.
Right.
And that really upset people. There was a dissonance there.
It's well, again, people don't like change.
Yeah, right. All the way back around to the beginning.
Yeah, people don't like change. People don't like when you take something and spin it on its head, but at the same time, like, this is hard to say, but it's like, that's like saying, I'm going to use something that I like so that I don't sound, so I don't make it out as hypocritical, but that's like if they took Spider-Man and they said, okay, we're going back in time and we're making it so instead of being bitten by a spider, he's bitten by a butterfly. And when he gets wounded, he gets into a cocoon, and that's how he heals himself or something. And it's like, but we're keeping the Spider-Man moniker. And it's one of those where it's like, okay, it's not a change I like, but let's see what they're going to do. I'm not going to be happy going into it. I already know that, but I can disassociate all of that for myself to be able to go in and be like, I'm willing to see what it is, why they're making such a drastic change, even though that's very unrealistic. It's a stretch. That's a stretch of an example, but I'm trying to go on the extreme here. Like,
how far of a stretch is it though? I know the origins are the same, but Miles Morales, like, you can imagine all of these old school Spider-Man fans that knew Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, we got this black kid that's going to be Spider-Man. What the hell? That ain't my Spider-Man.
Half black, half Latino. Jesus.
So they close themselves off to it.
Right.
And don't even, like, dude, Into the Spider-Verse is probably my favorite Spider-Man
It's my favorite Spider-Man movie, period.
It's so good.
It's out on Tuesday. I cannot wait. I have a countdown timer on my clock for when I can go pick it up at Best Buy.
My pretentious taste in movies is like, Hereditary was my favorite film of 2018. The fan in me is like, dude, there is no more enjoyable movie that came out than Into the Spider-Verse. It was just so good. It was hilarious. It was super heartfelt. And I think it was like the perfect way to bridge those two fans, right?
Right.
So that people who are so attached to Peter Parker are able to still get their Spider-Man and then introduce you to this new young dude. Like, when he became Spider-Man in the third act is just some of the greatest stuff I've ever seen.
I can't get over how good that film is. Because it's especially they did a better job in Spider-Verse with connecting me as a fan to a Spider-Man character than the previous ones.
Yeah.
Even the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, because like, even as much as I like the original trilogy, the biggest thing, because they do so much justice to the Spider-Man character, not just like Peter Parker, Miles Morales, Gwen, but just Spider-Man as a entity.
Yeah,
they do so much justice to that, because the same way you're going into the story with Miles as an audience member, you literally are in Miles' shoes at the very beginning. You're just a person who looks up to Spider-Man. This is a world where Spider-Man exists, and even though he technically doesn't exist in the real world, but he's a character that people look up to. So you and Miles are one in the same.
Yeah,
you're in the same exact boat. We see a superhero and we look up to them, and then he dies. But then he gets to fulfill his dream of, I want to be Spider-Man, and then actually having it happen. But then having to deal with the consequences of well, not consequence, but just the result of having that responsibility and what it actually means to be Spider-Man. It's not all, oh, he gets to web swinging, that's cool. It's, oh, I have to have a whole second life, and I have all these responsibilities that I didn't really think about. Do I really want to do this? So it all just, the webbing, and I hate to use that as a pun, but the webbing in Spider-Verse is so good, because now you have this connection with Peter B. Parker, who is a Spider-Man that's 22 years in the making, and he's lost Aunt May, and he's split from Mary Jane. So he's kind of in that same role, but in a different perspective, where he has to relearn what it's like to be a hero. And then you have Gwen, who lost her best friend, who was Peter Parker, and having to contend with being alone and having to shoulder that weight alone. So now you have, specifically for those 3 characters, this fork where they all meet and learn off each other. So you, as a audience member, are in the same shoes as Miles, learning these abilities and the fear that comes from that, and the scariness of it all. But then you're also having that connection with being somebody that's helping someone else inadvertently. So Miles being there and showing Gwen that she can have friends and that there are people that she can relate to, and then showing Peter that no matter how long you've done this, the impact is still just as important. So even though you feel you're new to this world, you're still giving back, even though you're just watching it. Like the fact they pulled that off
that's
is
really
incredible. So man, like there's a lot of movies that get me emotional, but Spider-Verse got me to cry like a bitch more than once.
2 or 3 times. The leap of faith when he drops Peter B. Parker into the freaking portal at the end.
I got goosebumps.
Yeah, I did too.
Just the whole because that's the other thing with Peter Parker. I think Peter B. Parker is the definitive representation of any Peter Parker ever. Because even though he's jaded and he's sad, like a lot of people say, oh, his is the depressed fat Peter. It's like, yeah, true, but that doesn't make him any less endearing. If you really want to boil it down, yes, he's sad, yes, he feels like he's messed his life up and that he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore. Like in the movie, Miles tries to throw the with great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility line, and he stops him. Even though that was his mantra, that's what pushed him into the world. He's like, stop, don't, I'm tired of it. Even though that's where he's at that point of his life, not once did he hesitate to put his life on the line to save everyone else.
For sure.
And that goes across everybody. And that's, as the movie ended with Stan Lee's words, that's what it takes to be a superhero. But you spend the entire movie learning that, and that's why it's the best Spider-Man movie, period, because the previous movies are good to an extent of you're like, oh, that's Spider-Man on the big screen, and then it ends with, I'm Spider-Man. It's like, oh, that's awesome. But there's a disconnect for me, even though I love the films and it gets me pumped to see Spider-Man swinging through New York. When they end it with, I'm Spider-Man, it's like, yeah, you are, and it's like, no, I'm nobody. I just enjoy this film. But then the way they introduce you into the Spider-Verse world and how they end it with, anyone can wear the mask. You can wear the mask. You didn't know that before. You know it now, and it's like, this is Spider-Man. That's the real message of Spider-Man.
That's really cool.
It's not I'm Spider-Man, I'm Peter Parker, and I'm Spider-Man. It's this can happen to anybody.
We're all
we're all a superhero in our own way, and you have to recognize that, and that's the message that needs to be sent out, and that's the message that I got when I was reading Spider-Man. So this being the first film to really translate that properly, Once that comes out on Blu-ray on Tuesday, it's not leaving my player. It's gonna be on repeat. It's
Ray Alfafara, Believe in Fate. Check them out. Check down in the description. I got some links. Thank you guys so much for coming by. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, take just a second to click that little thumbs up button. Subscribe if you want to stay up to date with even more terrible content. And until next time, and on behalf of me and Ray, be terrible.
Be terrible.